Bible Project, we kind of set out to make something that didn't quite exist, because we wished it existed for us. And, it was it was a bit of a risk, because it's like, well, nobody thinks that they need this, because nobody else is quite making this. So we're going to create something that people aren't quite aware that it's what they need. And then we'll see what happens. And so we're still seeing what happens. But that's our goal, you guys. Jesus is so beautiful. And he's the culmination of the whole thing. And to be able to learn how to see it as a unified story, it will change your life. And change how you think about everything. At least that's what it's been doing to us. And the Bible Project is a way that we can help share that with you all. Hey there, I'm Tim Mackey. I'm a pastor at Door of Hope Church and also a professor of Bible at Western Seminary in the wonderful city of Portland, Oregon.
My name's John Collins. I'm a founder of Epiphio and Sincerely Truman, which are both communication companies that care about getting to the heart of why things matter.
We believe the Bible is a profound and very beautiful book that's telling one complete story from beginning to end, but it's also a very long book. And it means it's often confusing and is just intimidating overall.
So this project is all about exploring the entire biblical narrative, but breaking it up into short 5-minute animated videos that help you understand the structure and themes of the Bible. And we're going to do this in 2 ways.
So first, we're going to go through book by book, because we believe each book of the Bible has been given a unique design. That is, the author has given it a structure and a flow of thought by placing key stories or poems and so on. So before you dive into the details of any book of the Bible, which is really easy to get lost, we're going to help you back up, get a picture of the design and how it fits into the overall story.
Secondly, we're going to take major themes in the Bible, and we're going to trace those themes from the beginning to the end of Scripture. So these are things like sacrifices, the Messiah, heaven and earth.
We obviously have a lot of work to do because there's a lot of books in the Bible and a lot of themes in the Bible. So you can actually check out our whole list that we want to do on our website at jointhebibleproject.com.
We'd love for this project to stay free, but we need your help, and you can help us in 2 ways.
One, you can help donate to the current video in production. We have a goal that we're trying to reach for each video. Once we hit that goal, boom, we're going to get it moving.
Or secondly, we're looking for monthly supporters who will chip in a little bit and help us on our production schedule. Even a couple dollars helps. And our goal is to get 5,000 monthly subscribers who are funding this entire effort.
And that is why we love the Bible Project. The Bible Project is an incredible resource. They are the reason why this channel, why this mobile recording studio, and why I'm sitting here talking to you. Over the past 3 years since I've discovered them, they've helped me rediscover the Bible on its own terms, have a closer walk with Jesus, and the encouragement and inspiration to go out on my own and do a project like this to not only help share their content, but my voice and others as we rediscover the Bible on its own terms. And I'm just so grateful for them. I'm so grateful for this channel. We are not the Bible Project. But I am a huge fan of them, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share their content and point people towards them. If I do anything good in this channel, if I point somebody to the Bible Project, I am extremely grateful for that. I actually got a chance to go do a Bible Project pilgrimage last winter, and it was amazing. I went there for a Hebrew Bible conference at Multnomah University. Seeing Ray Lubeck, all these students come back and honor him. Our channel actually got a chance to interview Ray Lubeck. If you haven't seen that, you should check it out. It'll definitely be in the notes. But so many great opportunities to see Bible scholars speak there. Dr. Carmen Imes, Tim Mackey, just so many. Carissa Quinn from the Bible Project as well. It was a great experience, but I got to tour the Bible Project studios as well and get a behind the scenes. I got to meet Tim Mackey. I got to deliver some thank yous to him and see everything from the incredible animation studios to the Bible Project bathroom that is notorious, that you will blow your mind with the wallpaper that's in there. So yeah, this channel is a huge fan of the Bible Project, and we're going to continue to share their content and point people towards them. But we've got a big announcement. We're going to actually, tomorrow, I'm interviewing Jon Collins, co-founder of the Bible Project, the man behind it all. My son, so cute, he says, "That's the question guy, Daddy." It's like, yeah, that's the question guy. And but he's the man behind it all. I've done some research and really dug into what's going on with the Bible Project. I'm stand on a limb and say that the Bible Project would not be there without Jon Collins stepping out in faith and asking questions and doing the things that he's done. So grateful to be interviewing him tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to check it out. And as we're getting ready to interview him, I want to lead us into the next segment, and let's learn a little bit more about Jon Collins.
I was born in Portland. I grew up in the suburbs of Seattle, so Northwest kid. And I grew up in a evangelical, kind of Baptist rooted church, non-denominational church. Um, and it was very, it was awesome. I mean, I loved it. Like it was a great childhood. I never had really a rebellious moment in my growing up. I just was always a very inquisitive kid, and really learned the boundaries pretty early of like what questions were off limits and what was on limits. But I was really eager to like um, make my faith work, and in my senior year of high school, I had a youth pastor who really helped me connect my faith to my mind in a really great way that charged me up enough to go to Bible college. And so then I came back to Portland to go to Multnomah University and study Bible theology. And I did that for 4 years. And that's where I met Tim. That's where I met my wife as well. And I've stayed in Portland ever since. I mean, sermons can be so boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've had sat through, I don't even know how many thousands of hours of sermons in my life, right?
Yeah.
And the amount of those that actually were impactful for me could be counted on maybe one hand. And but I was listening to this pastor back then who just like was a really great storyteller. He was really great communicator, was able to kind of take you on a journey. It almost like it felt like you were watching a movie more than listening to a sermon. And I was like, what is he doing? And how do you do that? And so I just became really interested in novel communication within church settings. This was back when I'm not sure if you were around the scene when like Rob Bell was
Yeah.
doing his Numa thing. It was like so simple. It was just him on a sidewalk planting two trees, talking about the tree of the Garden of Eden, the tree of life there, and how it shows up at the end of the story of the Bible too. And it's this 10-minute little homily while he's planting a tree. And I was more engaged and I learned more and I thought more about this idea in the Bible than in any sermon I'd ever listened to. And so I was like, what is happening? Like, what is this? So I became really interested in digital media at that point. I loved what Rob Bell was doing with the Numa, and I had no experience with any sort of video production. So um I bought some video editing software and a camera, and I started making projects for people. And it was a typical kind of just like promo video stuff. And during those projects is when I started to learn that I started to notice that I would go and shoot things. I'd come back to edit it and I'd be really dissatisfied with what I shot. It was just bad lighting, bad composition, just everything. I was just like, ugh, what is this? And so, um, for a couple of projects, I started to figure out how to lean in on just using really simple visuals, stuff I would draw, stuff I would just find, and then I learned how to do keyframing. I started learning After Effects, and so I started to learn animation to supplement my really bad cinematography. And then I learned that you could actually communicate a lot and get through some dense ideas with these visuals when done in a specific way. And so I was working on that, doing those kind of projects, and and there's this phenomenon of the explainer video that was actually being birthed at that time. And so I just kind of ended up being on the ground floor with a bunch of other people figuring out this new type of media. That the best word I have for it is explainer video. But it's just relying on animation to explain things with really short pieces of media.
So the Bible is one of the most influential books of all time, but what is it exactly?
Yeah, some people treat the Bible like a divine behavior manual that dropped out of heaven. Others use it like a theology dictionary, written to answer all of our questions about God. And others still think of it like a grab bag of spiritual one-liners and inspiring stories.
But here's the thing. The Bible isn't written as a rule book or theology dictionary or even as a collection of inspirational writings.
Then what is the Bible?
Well, open up the Bible to page 1 and read the opening words.
In the beginning.
Now, turn to the last chapter of the Bible where you can read this.
And they reigned forever and ever. Okay, so the Bible's telling a story from beginning to end.
Yeah, it's one epic narrative about how God has appointed humanity as his partners to oversee this amazing world. It's about how we've ruined that partnership and how God is restoring us and our world through Jesus.
Okay, one story, but there's a lot going on. Many plots, many characters, all written in many different books.
But once you see how every book has a careful literary design, you won't get lost. And you can see how it fits into the overall storyline.
There are also important repeated themes that weave through the entire biblical story.
Yeah, like the covenants that God makes with people.
Or the hope for a human who will confront evil.
Or how God's justice will one day make all things right. And every theme culminates in the story of Jesus.
There are also a lot of strange words in the Bible, words we don't use in normal language.
But when we take time to understand them, we discover profound ideas that contribute to the overall biblical story.
So it takes work to know how to read the different types of literature in the Bible.
But once you do learn how, you'll discover that the Bible is a work of literary genius that can transform how you live and how you think about everything.
So that's what the Bible Project is all about, to help people see the Bible as one unified story that leads to Jesus.
But Tim, I met Tim in college. We became friends. Our wives are friends and remained really good friends. Tim and his wife moved out to Madison, Wisconsin, where he went, just continued to study the Bible for just years. He got his PhD in biblical studies and Semitic languages. And so him and I stayed in touch throughout the years. And then he moved back to Portland in 2012. So when he moved back to Portland, I was like, Tim, can you do this YouTube channel with me? Like, you know what you're talking about. And I just love talking about the Bible with him because he's one of the guys that I could ask all my questions to.
Yeah.
I mentioned how I knew where the boundary lines were of certain questions you could ask and not ask. When I would hang out with Tim, there was no boundary lines. Like, I just would ask whatever. And I could persistently ask whatever. And Tim would kind of be like, yeah, and he'd pile on his questions onto my question. And we would just get it all out there. And then when we'd go to the Bible, he'd really help me see
and try to not just take my questions and just force the Bible to answer my questions, but to try to come to the Bible and say, what is this doing as literary art? Like what questions is it asking and churning on? And those conversations were always so rewarding. So I asked him if he would write some videos with me, and he was in. He was down. He was working for a church in Portland, and that church gave him like a day a week to work on it with me, half a day a week at first. And we just started writing scripts in 2012, and then we had our first 2 videos that we released in 2014. We worked on it for a while, just kind of slowly, just kind of trying things out, trying to figure out how these videos would work. And then we were off to the races. We released those videos in 2014, and now 9 years later, almost, we've done 180 videos. What eventually happened was, while I was extremely committed to God and extremely committed to the way of Jesus and to the church, like, I'm in, I want this, more times than not, coming to the Bible would just make it harder for me. It just made things confusing, and it became a chore that I just didn't want to deal with if I didn't have to. And so practically, I was becoming a post-Bible Christian. And I was committed to God, but the Bible felt crazy.
I was not a youth group hero. When puberty set in, I got my first skateboard. And my first skateboard had a barbarian holding a severed head standing on a pile of corpses that he had hacked to pieces. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So there's no way I'm going to go to youth group. So I grew up, my family did attend church, but they definitely didn't, some my assistants there. I didn't, John and I had really different growing up relationships to the Bible. And I didn't read it, and I was familiar enough with churchianity from, our family attending church. But seriously, the moment I got my first skateboard at 11, and then it was over. And I was sneaking out of the house on Saturday nights to wake up at my friend's house so I wouldn't have to fight with my parents about going to church in the morning. So I ended up at a skateboard park when I was 16, and actually told part of the story last year. It's an outreach ministry to skateboarders, where I became a follower of Jesus. It's where John and I actually met a number of years later. Mm-hmm. And there I was introduced to Jesus, and stories about him and his teachings that were Jesus is amazing. You don't have to be religious at all. Just hear stories about him. He's unbelievable. And so I began to become interested again in Jesus. Nothing else and anything associated with him, but with him. And those stories and those teachings about Jesus worked on me for years. And when I was 19, almost 20, I became a follower of Jesus. So one thing I noticed as I began to read about Jesus in the Bible was that he talked about the Bible a lot. And so as opposed to having some kind of, puzzling Bible, I just had the extremely bewildering Bible of, I'm down for Jesus, but WTF, like, what is going on in this book? Like there's Jesus, and then there's all these sex scandals and all the violence and the blood, and what does this have to do with anything? Oh, but then there's the Psalms. That's cool. I actually like the Psalms. Yeah, that's beautiful. But really, I didn't understand what on earth these had to do with each other, and I didn't have a framework for taming these books, to domesticate their weirdness. And so what I didn't sit in my bewilderment very long. I signed up for classes at a local Christian university, and I just, God's mercy towards me. I ended up in a series of classes and with an amazing, wise set of professors, And it wasn't just my view of the Bible that was getting completely reshaped. It was my whole identity, my view of myself and the world, because that's the power that these texts have when you're able to hear them on their own terms. But hearing these texts on their own terms actually takes a lot of work, and a lot of you know what I'm talking about. So I'm in these classes about how to study the Bible, and I'm introduced to the fact that they're literature. They're literature, and they're ancient Jewish literature. And that the way that these books are designed and woven together, and the diversity of types of literature, and the poetry, and the artistry, and the craft that went into these books as communication acts, they're stunningly sophisticated and profound. Then I end up in a series of classes where I'm learning this thing called biblical theology. And it's a way of putting together Christian beliefs, not by imposing a system on the Bible, but by learning to read it as a unified story and trace key repeated words and themes that keep coming up, and learning to trace themes like holiness through the narrative arc of the Bible. And then I was like, oh my God, this is changing my life. It was incredible. It blew my mind, and it actually has never stopped. So then I ended up in a whole other series of classes because I was like, I want to learn how to read this thing in the language that it's written in, because this surely can't be the end. And it was not the end of my questions. So then it's like language and culture and history and background. And then I really went for it because I started getting interested in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And dude. So amazing. And then I ended up in a whole other graduate program diving into the history of the composition and the making of the Bible. And so I walk away from this. It's been 21 years I've been at this, and it's completely reshaped my paradigm of what it means for me to be human, what it means for me to relate to Jesus, and what it means for me to understand him in light of these texts that he said were a unified story leading to him. And when people talk about the strange, I resonate with the bewildering Bible because I experienced that. But it's such a distant memory now. It's kind of like having your dear closest friend that you know is weird to everybody else, but you know what they're really like. And you know they're deeply misunderstood, and you want to help the world see how awesome your friend is. And that's kind of what I've been doing in classrooms and mostly in local church settings in and around the Portland area. But then Jon and I met up, and our bewilderment and confusion and our journeys came together.
Yeah, Tim was moving back to Portland. When Tim was out in Madison studying, you were studying with people who didn't necessarily follow Jesus, but navigating this path of I want to be committed to following Jesus while really understanding this book. And we would have these conversations when you came back to town, and I would pepper you with questions. We'd have these good conversations that I really respected. And there were other teachers I was listening to. I was listening to a lot of Tim Keller at that time, who's a great teacher. And I would realize there's a lot here. This is still really beautiful and profound, and I wanted to understand theology. So what I was doing as a job is I was making videos that explain things. I was making cartoons for the internet that explain things. And doing a lot of work here in the Valley with companies you've heard of, and then lots of startups that you haven't heard of, and trying to explain, why should I care about this thing you're building? And so I was making all these videos. I was getting tired of explaining cloud computing for the 10th time. So I was pitching this idea of, why don't we make a YouTube channel that explained theology? For me, it was theology. We don't need to explain the Bible. Let's explain theology. And my working title for the project, do you remember what it was?
Yeah, of course. It's so bad.
It was. I'm glad we didn't use it. I called it Theology is Boring, was the name of the YouTube channel. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, it had gotten pretty stale, but I knew it could be exciting. And so we started
working on that, like Tim came and said, well, here's 100 videos I'd like to make. And I was like, awesome. Those are awesome. We started having conversations around the first few, and immediately it was like, oh my goodness, this content is helping me so much as we dialogued, as we wrote, as we began to direct these videos.
This is one of the big paradigm shifts. Our core mission with the resources we're creating is to help people see that the Bible is a unified story that leads to Jesus. But there's a lot of preloaded assumptions that we come to the Bible with. And one of them, I'm recognizing it more and more, is this very issue right here. I think our inability to see the wedding of human and divine creativity in the biblical text, it actually prevents us from being able to hear the Bible on its own terms. What this speaks to, in my humble opinion, what it speaks to is a couple underlying assumptions that are pervasive in the history of Western Christianity. One of them is our assumption about how God works in the world. We assume that if God's will and purpose is carried forward in the world, it's going to be despite human beings, or without employing their agency in some way. The main problem with that conception is the Bible. If you look at page 1 of the Bible, look at how the nature of the story is set up. It's about God creates this incredible piece of real estate and then wants to share and partner with humans in directing where the ship is going. That's the very nature of the story of the Bible, is the divine-human partnership. And apparently God takes an enormous amount of stock and dignity in human decision-making because exhibit A, human history, you know what I'm saying? So it's actually woven into the heart of the narrative itself that God has chosen to partner with humans in how his purposes and will is carried out through history. Of course, that doesn't go well until Jesus comes, but we'll talk about that in the late afternoon session, right? But another part of it is that it's an impoverished conception that many of us have about how the Spirit is at work. We think that if the Spirit is at work, if God's at work in someone through the Spirit, then that means that it minimizes their will or their purpose or their agency. Many of us have a conception when it says the Scriptures are inspired by the Spirit, what it really means is their minds went blank and the authors were just like doing the trance of a thing. But that's just those there's actually, not only is there no biblical passages that describe the writing of the Bible in that way, there are many passages that do describe the writing of the Bible describe just the opposite type of experience. They describe authors in full possession of their faculties, creating these texts. And so this is a big one, in my opinion. It's about learning to have a much more robust and biblical view of how these texts are a human and divine word, so that what these brilliant human authors communicated is what God wants his people to hear. And that might seem simple when you first hear it, but it's a paradigm shift that many of us need to undergo to, I think, be able to hear the Bible on its own terms.
Welcome to Bible Project. Now, most days, Tim and I are locked away in a room somewhere writing a script. But Mike, you get to hang out and talk with our audience all the time.
Yeah, I get to spend a ton of time with you guys. And one thing that they're often asking is, how does this whole thing work? Like, what makes Bible Project-y?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't really know how to answer that.
Maybe, Mike, you could go talk to the people on our team, and you could find out what it is that makes the Bible Project.
Love it. I'm in.
Dan, here we are.
Mike, welcome to the podcast studio.
Thanks,
for coming
man.
by.
I love that we are doing this podcast
Dude,
style.
I'm so comfortable right now. It's great to see you.
I love it. Well, man, there are kind of similar to our videos, a ton of different folks that listen to our podcast.
Totally.
Why do you think they want to tune in to a couple of people just nerding out about the Bible?
Yeah, I think what makes the podcast unique is at the end of the day, it's simple. It's just a conversation. And there are usually three characters in the conversation: Jon, Tim, and you guys and the listeners. And, we've tried to create a place where we're not trying to sell anybody something. We're not trying to persuade somebody of a specific line of reasoning or theology. We're trying to create a place where people can just be curious and say, hey, check out this interesting thing I've been learning in the Bible.
All right. Well, everyone, this is Aaron.
Hey everyone, I'm Erin. I lead our classroom project.
And Classroom, for those that don't know, kind of one of our newer projects here. Tell us about it. Like, what are you working on? What are you building?
Yeah, so with Classroom, what we want to do is make biblical education accessible to everyone. And how we're doing that is we're inviting students like you, and we have Tim here as well, and we actually film classes right here at this table.
Well, hey everyone, this is Nathan, and Nathan's designing our app. Nathan, it feels like there are millions of apps out there. And so what makes the app that we're creating unique for our audience?
Yeah, well, we genuinely think that it's more than just an app. It's part of a long tradition, like thousands of years long, of using technology to share and teach the Bible.
Okay, it feels like there's a ton to unpack here, because when I read the Bible, I find it extremely difficult to understand, especially when I'm by myself. And so are you saying that the app can actually help people understand Scripture? Like, how does that actually play out for them?
Yeah, well, in addition to reading the Bible in the app, we want to make all of our resources available for people. And we have a lot of great resources: videos, podcasts, articles, even classes. We want it all available in the app. But we're not just going to put it there. We want people to be able to find the right path for them through that content. And ultimately, we want to explore new ways of reading and studying that are engaging, really help people fall in love with Scripture in whole new ways.
Wow, that sounds super cool.
Yeah, totally. I love to imagine people reading in the app and after a while just realizing, man, I've read the whole Bible. But not only have I read it, but I really understand it like I haven't before.
Man, I think you guys are really going to love this app.
I'm a little biased, but I totally agree.
So, Mike, you got to talk with the team. What did you find out? What makes Bible Project Bible Project?
Man, it's a combination of things, like our teams, our ideas, but most importantly, it's about the Bible and you guys. And everything that we make and do is about helping you experience the Bible.
That checks out.
We obviously really like the Bible. We love to explore it, to help people understand it. But what really makes all of our work worth it is to hear the stories of how you're being impacted by experiencing the Bible in a new way.
We have a lot of resources, and everything that we make is free for everyone.
And while it's not free to create, we have a lot of talented people giving time and energy to make all these resources. They are free for us to give away, and that's because of your generous support.
If you want to be a part of this and us making more in this coming year, you can give at BibleProject.com.
You guys, thank you for being part of this with us.
We've tried to create a place where we're not trying to sell anybody something. We're not trying to persuade somebody of a specific line of reasoning or theology. We're trying to create a place where people can just be curious and say, hey, check out this interesting thing I've been learning in the Bible.